In this first example, we're going to learn how to make deposit invoices. Now, deposit invoices can be made in either the quote or the order, depending on where you have to initiate that activity. More commonly, they'll be made in the quote, and you can send those electronically with the quote for payment. They can be paid via credit card or via ACH or old-fashioned way. You can receive a check. So in this example, what we're going to do is we're going to produce a quote, and in that quote, we are going to make a deposit for 50% required to initiate the work. So let's take a look at how this would work. I'm going to open up my quote that I've prepared, and you can see here that I have a quote for $45,000, and we're going to use the same transaction cloned over and over again in each one of these different scenarios. So in this case over here, I have my items, which is going to be a group of plaque signs as well as some install that goes along with this. All right, so what I want to do is I want to click on my deposit invoices. First of all, I want to take a look at that, and now I want to create a deposit. Okay, so I want to add a deposit to this. You can see here I don't have any deposits. There's no invoice activity here, but here I'd like to click on Add Deposit. And when I do that, it's going to give me the total amount of the quote, and then I am going to request 50% of that. So if I know the figure, I can type it in here, but if I want to go ahead and just add a percentage and have Mothernode do the math for me, I'm going to say get amount 50%, and that's going to be $22,883. If I want to change the name of this to sales receipt or deposit or anything else, I can do that here, but right now the default always ends up to be deposit invoice. That's what's going to print on the top of the transaction. And then down below, I want to give my customer a note, say please pay deposit to move forward. Okay, anything that you want to add in there, you can go ahead and do it, but you do have to add something that is required. Now, what's also optional in this case is that you can actually include the line items if you want in the deposit. So if you want to include all the line items or just some of the line items or none of the line items, you don't have to click on this tab at all. But if you do want to include any, you can put that in here. I'm going to say select all. We're just going to add that in the deposit so they can see what it is that they're going to be paying on. All right. All right, now I'm going to click Save. And you'll see here that I have the deposit that's required is going to be for this amount. If I want to, I can print this and attach this as a PDF, and it's going to show my deposit information with my note, which is going to be listed right here, plus the line items down below and the remit to information and total amount that's being requested. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward stuff. It's going to be one screen here. This is my PDF. Now back over here to the quote. If I want to, I can receive payment from here if I'd like. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Before I do any of this, I'm going to take you into the header. We'll see some other things in a moment. If I need to edit this or change it, I just click on Edit, and then I can make my adjustments here if I have to. And if I want to void this 100% and scrap it all together, I can click Void, and it'll strike it out and will no longer be accessible. All right. Now in this case here, I am happy with this, so I want to go into my quote header. And then in my quote header, I'm going to go ahead and edit this record. And then down below, we're going to see my deposit information. So I have my deposit information, which is going to be the $22,000. I have not received it yet. The payment's not been applied. The confirmation has not been applied. And of course, the deposit receive date has not been applied here as well. So a couple things to note. If you're receiving a manual check on this, then basically you're going to go into this particular record or the order, depending on where you are in the process. And I can do this in the order if it wasn't done in the quote. I can go over there when the deposit is received, maybe the order started, and then I want to apply it there. That's perfectly fine. However, if this is being done electronically via Stripe using credit card or ACH with Plaid, then in that specific case, the deposit would automatically be applied when the payment was made by the customer online. The payment type would be credit card or ACH. The confirmation number would come from Stripe or Plaid, so whatever that comparable confirmation number would be available there, and naturally the date would follow too. Okay, so you would go ahead and apply that there. I'm going to click Save. As it relates to deposits, you can keep track of all your deposits in the accounting menu underneath the Deposit Invoices module. So in the Deposit Invoices module, this is going to show me all the deposits that I have that are outstanding. And so in this case here, you can see here, right now I'm filtered on all. I can look and filter on received, and I can say not received. Now in this specific case, we're going to see two columns. We're going to note quotes and orders. So it's going to give you the transactions of both. So in this case here, we have a quote where an order wasn't made. In this case over here, we have a quote that was followed by another order that was made. And in this instance over here, there is no quote, only an order. More importantly is going to be, you see some of this text is plain text and some of this is bold. And this is basically going to indicate where the deposit was actually issued. So in this case, the deposit was issued in the quote, but in this case it was issued in the order. And in the case where we have both, we have a quote and the deposit was issued in the order over here. So again, you can print this out here, you can download the deposit, or you can go ahead and send it electronically by clicking on this. Finally, when we get to the invoice portion, we'll see the deposit that was applied is going to be applied to the actual invoice as the first payment, and the deposit applied will go against the final invoice. All right, in this next example, we're going to learn how to generate an invoice off of an order. And so there's a couple of things we'll need to be doing first to understand how this works. But traditionally, when we ship something or complete it or install it or whatever it is that's going to happen in the fulfillment process, then we're eligible to make an invoice. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at an order now that we have that was built off of the quote that we just made. And you can see here that a deposit required has been established, the deposit has been received, the check number, and the deposit date are all listed here as well. Now when I look at this over here, you're going to see here these are going to be the items that I'm going to be billing for. 100% of this order is going to be completed. Now, you've probably seen this in other videos, but there is two statuses to orders, and right now I'm working in an open status for orders. And in order to get my shipping and install tab or my completion tab, whatever it's going to be called, basically I have to process that order. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to process the order. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to click yes. And now I'm going to get the ship and install tab that appears here. So I'm going to click on this, and then you can see I have all of my products. And in this case, like I mentioned, I'm going to ship this 100% so I can bill this order 100% for the $45,000. So I'm going to click on this, ship all, process shipment. I'll click on create shipment, okay. And now all of these items have been completed, and I have a packing slip down below. More importantly, this is where this order number 1512, ends up in my ready-for-invoice module. So over here is my ready-for-invoice module. I can click on this item, open it up, see some more details about it. And then what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to say close, check the box, process the selected invoices. And now you can see in my invoice module, I have invoice 765 for order 1512. When I open this up, so once I open this up, I can examine the headers. I have my deposit received. The total amount for the invoice is $45,000. The balance that's going to be due to the customer is the remaining 50%, which is $22,000. I'm going to click on print, choose my options. I'll just click print. And now this is what my invoice is going to look like. My tax exempt number is available here, so there's no tax being charged. Less deposit of the $22,000, the amount due is going to be the remaining $22,000. So now we've created a full invoice, completed the order, and when we go back into the actual order itself, we'll note that the order has automatically been tagged as completed, and that happens when the only or final invoice has been initiated in Mothernode. It completes the order 100%. All right, in this next example, we're going to take a duplicate of the exact same order that we previously used to invoice 100% of, but in this case, we want to produce some partial billing based on what was shipped. So let's take a look at this. We have the line items over here that we're going to be working with. And then down below, what we want to do is we want to process the order. And over here, we're going to click on process order and click yes. And now that brings us to having the ship and install tab. So in this case over here, what we want to do is we want to select some of these items to be produced and shipped. And then we're going to ship the balance and produce 2 invoices for this order. So over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select 2 of these and then 7 of these. And that is all we're going to be including in the first billing cycle here. So I'm going to click on process shipment, create shipment. All right, so now we've completed the 2 over here, and we've completed 7 of the 15. So we still can ship some more here. These are still open. We're going to leave this as it is. Now, what does that mean? That means that we have order 1514 that's eligible to be produced in the ready for invoice. We can make an invoice off of this just for this. And you can see here that Mothernode tags this as a partial, okay? The partial amount is for the $23,000. If we want to inspect this further, we can open this up, and then we can see the details and the shipping number that coincides with this. Okay, so we're going to come back and take a look at that shipping number in just a minute, because there's some interesting things we're going to be doing in just a second. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on Make the Invoice, and now I've produced my first invoice for this amount. Okay, all right, so very important. Let's click on this. Let's open this up, and we can see that when we print this, we did have a deposit of $10,000, and that deposit is going to be applied to the very first invoice that we create. So the $10,000 deposit has been exhausted on this, and then the balance due that's going to be on this particular invoice is going to be for $13,000. Okay? The next invoice that we produce will not have the deposit. So let's go back over here. We're going to go to our previous order activity, and then we're going to click on the ship and install tab again, and we'll make this easy. We're just going to say ship all, and we're shipping the balance of everything that's available to be shipped. We can see that we have our shipment history for the first one down below, and now once we do this and we say create shipment or completion, whatever you're going to be doing here, then what it's going to do is it'll make the second one, and we can see that it's not invoiced. Okay, now we're going to go back to the ready for invoice, and we can see that we have the next one, but there's a checkbox next to it, and this means that this is going to be the final partial. Okay, once this is completed, there's nothing left to invoice. So we have that. So what we're going to do is we're going to check the box here, process selected, and now we're going to go ahead and open this one up and print the final invoice. And when we print that final invoice, you're going to see the deposit no longer exists, because it was all used up in the first invoice, and then the balance due is going to be the remaining amount, which is going to be the $22,000. Okay? All right, back over here, just to complete this circle, if I go over into my order number, you can see that now it's been completed because the final invoices have been completed. Okay, so you can see these invoices down here, partial billing example, these are the ones that are going to be here. Okay, so everything worked out great. So in this next example, what we're going to be looking at is splitting up invoicing again, creating 2 partial shipments where we have the 2 partial invoices, but what we're going to be able to do is take those 2 separate invoices and blend them back together to make a single invoice, provide that to the customer, and then you'll be able to sync that with your accounting package. All right, so what I'm going to do here is this. I'm going to go back down below and say process order, and when I do this over here, then you're going to see that I have these items, same items that we've been looking at, and over here I'm going to click on the ship and install tab now that I've processed the order, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the exact same thing where I have 7 of these and 2 of these, and I'm going to create my first shipment, do that, click OK. And then while I'm here, I'm going to ship the balance to create a second shipment and a second invoice. So the first one has been listed here, and I'm going to do the exact same thing and click on this and ship it. And now when I go over to my ready for invoice screen, we will note that I have the 2 items here that we've shipped for the 1515 and the 1515, these ones over here. Now when I click on one of these, you're going to see that this can be invoiced by itself. It has the shipping number for 719 over here. Okay, so assuming that these were done on different days and you want to bring them back together to make a single invoice, what you'll notice here is going to be the mergeable orders. Okay, so it shows the additional order that's still sitting in ready for invoice that has the rest of these items. So if I want to, I can click on this and say merge. And when I do that, I click OK. And now when you look below, you'll see I have the 718 for this item, but it was also in shipment 719. This one was shipped on 7/19, so I can refer back to the individual packing lists that go along with these shipments. And now I've merged back to make the total amount for the $45,000. When I do that, I click Make Invoice. Again, I now have the invoice for the $45,000, the complete amount. When I open it up, it's going to look, everything looks great. I click on Print and Send, print over here, and now you can see that the bill is for the $45,000. Note in this specific example, I did not have a deposit. Okay, so there was no deposit taken in this specific example. So that's how you can remerge those transactions back together to make a single invoice. And then this can be synced to your accounting package. So in this next example, we're going to look at bypassing the quantities to ship, and this is going to be shipping the order 100% without getting to the shipping screen. So what it's going to do is going to go from the order that you're seeing right here directly into ready for invoice. So let's take a look at that. I have my open order I have my items down below, and in the previous examples we were getting the ship and install tab. And I'm doing that, as you've seen, by clicking on Process Order. But there's another option. If I click on this and I click on Process and Invoice, I'm bypassing the shipping process. So if I do this and say Process and Invoice, I click Yes, it's automatically shipped everything. So you're going to see that here. It's automatically completed everything, and it's put it right into my ready for invoice. We'll see 1516 is here. So in the case that you're going to be shipping something 100%, but you don't have to make, you're not relying on creating a FedEx or UPS integrated order with that, and you just want to get those completed, you can go ahead and use that method. And it still will, if you go back over here into your order, so if we go back to the order, it will still create the packing slip down below. So it just bypasses this step in the shipping screen coming up, allowing you to use FedEx and UPS integration. Okay? And in that case too, you won't be shipping partials. You're going to be completing this 100%, and then from that point forward, you're going to make your final invoice. So in this next example, we're going to show you how you can use Mothernode to produce recurring invoices. These are going to be ideal for either annual subscriptions, monthly subscriptions, annual maintenance, things like that. So all I have to do in this case here is produce another order. So now we're going to be looking at order 1518. And down below you can see here I have yearly maintenance for a service that I'm offering, and every year that maintenance is going to cost $750. And yes, I can change that as time goes on, but that's going to be something I can do later on. In this specific case, I just want to get the recurring activity taking place for this. So what I do is I click on New Recurring at the top. And when I do that, it's going to give me an option of which of the line items in my order that I want to have as part of this recurring event. Now I only have one line item, but if I had more with products in here, etc., I can determine which ones I wanted to eliminate, exclude, or just have the yearly maintenance like I have here with the single. So I'm going to click on this, Next. Alright, so here's the profile for the recurring order, and before I get into any of the details down below, let's take a look at the tabs. First of all, the profile includes when it's supposed to run, what this is going to be in reference to, etc. The order header is basically taking the information from the order that we have so we can see who it's for, the customer, etc. And then the order detail is going to give us the items that are eligible to be recurring on this particular order. So this is what's going to end up on the final invoice, this one line item that we selected. And of course we don't have any yet, but this is where the history would be for the recurring orders. So let's go back here to the recurring order profile and fill this out. So I'm going to call this one annual maintenance. I want this enabled to be yes. You can see that the order number that this originates from is going to be 1518, and it's for the total amount of the $750. The start date is going to be on, let's just say, the 31st, and the end date will be never. Okay, so it'll only happen on dates and times after this. Now in this case I really want to do an annual one, so it doesn't make a difference if I put the start date today or at the end of the month. But what I want to do here is going to be yearly, and then it's going to be every 1 year, and the actions that I can choose are one of the following. Automatically process an order, so make this order processed in order for me to fulfill it for the customer. So if there's something that they're going to be ordering on an annual basis that's a goods or service, then I would want to process the order. But in this case, it's going to be more maintenance based, and there's just going to be an invoice that's going out. It's going to be time and materials in this case. So what I want to do is I'll say automatically ship and install the item. And that's going to take this order and put it directly into ready for invoice for my accounting team to pick it up, just like we've been seeing all along with what ready for invoice does. Now, before I go ahead and choose any of this here, you do have different options. So when it comes to like daily, you can see that this would look like this. Weekly, these would be my options. So I want it every Thursday, Friday, etc. Over here, I can say monthly. Do I want it to fall on any of these days during the month? And then, of course, I can say yearly. And this is where I want to say every January, the first Sunday or the first Monday or the first day, okay, of that time period. So I can say on the first day in January. All right. Now when I click apply, this will go ahead and set up the recurring order. I can choose to force it to run now if I want to, but what will happen is that in my list of recurring orders, we'll now see that this is going to be the most recent one, the recurring order over here. And you can see I have different recurring orders set up to occur at different times and so on, and the next times that they're going to run. Okay, so that is how you can produce your recurring orders. If you need to edit any of them or make some changes along the way, all you have to do is, if there's a price increased over here, then you can change this, maybe just go up here to say 100%, and then the next recurring order that hasn't run yet will go ahead and run at the newest rate. Okay, so that's how you take care of that. I click save, and then back to the show all, and then you'll see here I have my new rate. If you need to turn off any of these, obviously you can just go ahead and disable them. So in this next example of invoicing, we're going to be talking about progress invoicing. And as you've seen so far, all of the invoicing that we're doing is generated on items that have been completed or shipped or installed off of the order. Progress invoicing is different. When we use progress invoicing, we're basically telling Mothernode, I don't care what you've shipped, this is the precise amount that I'm going to want to invoice my customer. And progress invoices are usually done with pay apps, contract payments, where you are allowed to bill a specific amount regardless of what you shipped in goods and services. So those goods and services may exceed the amount of your billing or may be below the amount that you're billing. So let's take a look at how we can do some progress invoicing in here. And for the sake of this example, I'm going to limit it to 2 invoices on this amount for $45,000. Now, I want to be clear about this one because sometimes people generate progress invoices as a substitute for deposits. This is actually going to produce a real invoice, and what that means is that this is taxable revenue where deposits aren't. So you need to make sure that when you are collecting deposits on a job, you're actually collecting a deposit, and this is not a progress invoice in this case. So keep those things in mind when you're doing this. All right, so I'm in an order. Now we're looking at order 1519. And so when I do this, I'm going to click on the edit item over here, the edit order entry. And you'll notice down below that there's an option here, a toggle to turn progress invoicing on. Now, very careful that when you're going to make this decision to turn it on, you are now changing the way that the invoicing is going to be done, and you cannot revert this process. So you have to know that you're definitely going to be wanting to do progress invoicing on this. And so in this case, we know that we want to do that. So I'm going to turn it on, and now I'm going to click save. All right. Again, we have our items. All right, nothing exciting here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go down below and we're going to process that order just the same. Okay. But what's different about this is that I'm not going to rely on the ship and install to produce invoices. You can see here nothing has changed, but what's mostly important to me is going to be the invoicing tab. And now you can see that in the invoicing tab, I have an add progress invoice. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to produce this by clicking on the add progress invoice, and you can see that I have the progress invoice information here. This is how much the total amount of the order is. There's been no deposit in this case here. And again, a similar function to me being able to choose 50% of this order. And then down below, I'm going to say part 1. All right. Okay, so most progress invoices are done without tax. It's just not being included in this. But if you needed to do, one or the other in this case, you could apply that. But most of it's going to be done without tax in this case. It's just a non-taxable amount. Okay. Over here, what I'm going to be doing is in the line items, you're going to see here underneath line items, if I want to, I can choose the line items that coincide with that particular order. And I am going to do this because I want to show you something. So in this case here, I'm just going to do the line item. Let's do all of this. So the quantity ordered is 2. And in this case over here, the quantity ordered will be 4. And I'm going to click Save. All right. So now what's happened is that this amount for this order has been brought over into my ready for invoice. Okay, and I have a progress invoice number over here. You can see here that regardless of what I've shipped, I haven't shipped anything, and this is going to be a completely separate transaction. All this is going to do is produce a packing slip for me, and if I'm actually shipping something, I can use my FedEx and UPS integration for that. If I'm installing it, of course, I can do that as well. But if I go over here into my ready for invoice, you'll see here on this ready for invoice, and it's going to say I have a partial because we've only accomplished some of this. We have $22,000 of that $45,000 order, and it is a progress invoice. Okay, so let's just go ahead and click on this, and we're going to process this selected. And what we'll do is this, and we're going to see we have progress invoice over here for this amount. And let's open up the invoice, and then let's go ahead and just print the invoice. So when I click on printing it, then you can just see here we have progress invoice part 1, that's the note that we made. And then we have the items and the quantities that were shipped, but notice that we don't reveal what those totals are because they're not eligible to be invoiced. But notice that we don't reveal those totals because it doesn't matter what those totals really are. We're allowed to invoice this amount, which is going to be the $22,000. So here we go, we've made our invoice for $22,000 and we're good to go. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the invoice and I want to click back on the order, and we're just going to do the second one. So in this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over here into my invoicing, and then down below I'm going to create another progress invoice. And when I do that, it's going to say get 100% of this remaining amount. So the remaining amount is the unbilled amount for the $22,000. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say get this amount, put description, part 2, and then I'll click save. And now I have the full amount for the $45,000, okay? And then over here I have my original invoice and my new one. And again, if I need to edit or void, I can do that. But I'm perfectly happy with these results, and I'm going to go back over here into my ready for invoice. So this of course would be months later or weeks later, a different part of the job. And I'll pick up this final one here for the remaining amount. I'll click on this, click on process selected. There you go. And now I have my second progress invoice for the remaining amount. Okay, so same thing will happen when I open this up and I print it. Again, I can send this electronically or print it as a PDF and put it in an email if I want. I'm going to print it here, and then you're going to see that I have the progress invoice amount without the line items. I didn't include the line items in this one, that's why it looks different. And then over here you can see that I have the final amount. Alright, so in this case over here, what's going to happen is you're going to see that this order is still in progress. And why? Because we haven't shipped anything yet. Okay, so I have to go ahead and complete these items. And in this process, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ship everything. Now, I could have shipped some of these, during the different phases of the project, but here what I want to do is I'm going to click Ship All, and I'll say Process Shipment, do this, all right. And now, once this is done, I want to go ahead and manually close out this order. It's very important. In the case of progress invoicing, you have to manually complete the order. So what you're going to do is once it's been completed, 100% shipped and 100% invoiced, then you can go ahead and complete that order. It's going to change the status, update successful. You cannot complete it if you haven't shipped the final items as well. Okay, so that is how you handle progress invoicing in your Mothernode account.